God didn't show up. I asked him to show up. I begged him to show up. I needed him to show up to confirm his reality to me. I can't be specific about how God would show up in your life. He doesn't work for you. He doesn't work for me. He does what he wants. Think about the way Jesus did things when he was on earth. There was a woman who touched the hem of his garment, and he told her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." Then there was another guy who, at the pool of Bethesda, and Jesus walked up to him and said, "Take up your mat and walk." And that crippled man was healed, and he got up and walked. Pharisees came and said, "Who did this to you?" Of course, it was on the Sabbath. It's like Jesus liked doing stuff like that on the Sabbath. Well, the Pharisees came out. "Who did this to you?" The guy says, "I don't know. This man came in, told me, take up my bed and walk, and I did." That guy didn't have faith. He didn't even know who Jesus was. The blind man, he made mud and put it on his eyes. Was it the centurion's son or servant? I didn't look up the details. Jesus told him, go home. He's healed. As I've said before, I grew up in a Pentecostal environment, and I know God has done great things in those churches. I've seen it. I've witnessed it myself. But I also think sometimes they get to be really formulaic, that you need to do this, you need to act like this. We're going to have a conference now on how to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. I mean, that isn't how God works. And thinking that God works that way, I think, can be damaging. God does what he wants to do. He doesn't work in our little box. We can't put him there. The whole story of Joseph, when Joseph was sold off into slavery, did he say, "Oh, God didn't show up there"? Then he was a slave in Potiphar's house for some number of years, and then he was in prison for some number of years, and all those times he didn't say, "God didn't show up." And then when his brothers came, which would be more than 20 years after they sold him into slavery, and his comment was, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." Through all of that, Joseph acknowledged that God did show up. I can't tell you how. I can't give you a formula. God is God. He does what he wants. He does it the way he wants. But he is there.